Whenever We Go, a novel by Aaron Casado. Chapter 2. Slightly past, just before, right after the beginning. Still the same place. This story hasn't gone anywhere yet. What are you Was that you knocking? Mila slowly demanded of Mike, enunciating each syllable. Her eyes were wide open, and she had unknowingly asked it as a police officer would of someone suspected of a crime. In her head, she had sounded calm, courteous, and friendly, yet firm and categorical in her impressing that she needed to know the answer. She thought the subtext would have read, "Hey there, no hard feelings or anything, but what the fuck are you doing outside my door?" Mila possessed a rather subjective idea of courtesy, it would seem. It never even occurred to her that Mike could hold a different view. Mark had initially been relieved to see Marla was all right, but as she shrieked at him, he became frightened for his own safety. Now that she had switched into interrogation mode, her eyes burning with a heated glow of doubt and suspicion, he thought he sensed loathing too, and a significant level of disgust. He feared he had made a drastic, deadly mistake by knocking on her door. He realized it was now imperative to explain that he had only come over to check on her and had nothing nefarious in mind, and that he should do so as quickly as possible. But he knew if he tried to speak, the pool of saliva, which had flooded into his mouth after he saw her, would dribble down his chin, and he would look like one of the dope heads on the first floor. Given how Marla was eyeing him, the last thing he needed at the moment was to appear crazy and intoxicated. As such, he did what anyone would do in that situation. He gulped. Unsurprisingly, distracted and unnerved by Marla's malice, Mark forgot at which point in the process of swallowing excess saliva when one is supposed to breathe. He inhaled midway through and began choking. All of Mila's polite firmness, what some might call bitchy bluntness, vanished, and she worryingly asked Mike if he was okay, reaching out with one hand to gently hold his shoulder, stooping as he leaned over and whizzed in phlegmy, staggered bursts. She thought she heard "I'm fine" amidst the spittle and hacking gasps, but then the idiot rushed over and grabbed Mike from behind. "Hang on! I read about the Heimlich operation in a magazine interview," Jeremy cried, wrapping one arm around Nate's neck and the other over his stomach. Dumbfounded, Mila watched the idiot first grab Mike's crotch, then settle his hand over Mike's bladder, who frantically squirmed all the while. Jeremy winked at the hottie as he said, "Stop moving, dingus. I'm saving your life here," then violently dug his fingers into Nate's stomach, his bladder really, in a steady rhythm, similar to the one he had allegedly read about. No such method had ever been discussed in the article, which was actually from a fictional interview in a comic book, yanking on Nate's neck to keep him in place. Mila worried that the idiot was going to do more damage to Mike than had already been done by Mike's obvious drug use. She distinctly, incorrectly, remembered he had been drooling when she opened her door, and most likely had only knocked because he needed some cash, which he undoubtedly would tell her was for food, rent, a baby mama, or any other pathetic etc. an addict might offer as an excuse. Yet, though she knew full well that Mike was only choking on his drool and wasn't in any need of medical assistance, upon hearing the words Heimlich operation, she had been extremely curious to see the idiot's interpretation of the famous maneuver. Now that Mike stared at her desperately, wide-eyed with terror as he struggled against the idiot's hold, his initial choking worsened by the arm pressing against his larynx, she realized it was now necessary to intervene. "Idiot, you're hurt," she started to yell. Before Mark threw up and interrupted Marla, he had been pleased to detect what he thought was a look of genuine worry in her expression as his other neighbor choked the life out of him, and also tried to force every ounce of urine from his body for some fucking reason. Whatever his name was, too, for that matter. But it's also possible this was just the euphoria one supposedly gets before dying from a lack of oxygen. In any case, the combined forces of suffocation, fear, confusion, and physical abuse, not to mention the odd dose of sexual arousal, which semi-explained the confusion, caused him to vomit on the floor in front of Marla's door. This likely saved his life, as his neighbor, whose name he still couldn't remember, immediately yelped with revulsion and let go, leaping off to the side as he shook his arm clear of vomit, and Mark could finally breathe freely once more. Mere seconds after he had been let go, Mila watched Mike begin choking on his own saliva again. She glared at the idiot, and said before he attempted the Heimlich again, "Leave him alone, asshole. You only made it worse." She touched Mike's shoulder again, patting it as she said the only comforting word she could think of. It's okay, buddy. You'll be fine." Even she found the statement weak, but felt it was felicitous enough and permissible for soothing an asphyxiated drug addict. Jeremy gagged, still shaking the vomit off his arm. None had actually touched him. His face scrunched with disgust. "If I'd have known he was going to go all Linda Blair on me, I wouldn't have bothered trying to save his sorry ass." "Save him? You damn near waterboarded him, you idiot," Mila rebuked, pointing at Mike, doubled over and still coughing, although he did seem to be recovering at last. "All you needed was a rag and a gallon. He wasn't even really Who the hell taught you to do the Heimlich?" Between his coughs, Mark struggled to wave Marla's concern away and tell them both, "I'm fine again." But his wheezing and gasps maimed the words until only a strangled "I" and a spitty remained. "No, Jeremy drawled, wagging a finger at the hottie. "Don't give me that Norma Ray tone, lady. I know what I saw, and what I didn't see was you doing anything to save this sad loser. You would have let the poor bastard die right in front of you, wouldn't you?" Mila's eyes narrowed, and had her path been clear, it's likely the idiot would have been permanently scarred from her beatdown. But on her first step towards him, her fist balled, she slipped in Mike's vomit and nearly fell over, barely managing to claw at the door frame and steady herself in time. The idiot had fearfully taken a step back when she lunged at him, but now he brazenly snorted and smirked at her. "I'll clean that up, promise," Mike shamefully gasped, but Mila just ignored him and watched the idiot, who just shook his head and sneered. "Look, screw this. I thought at first maybe something blew up or something," Jeremy said, turning towards his apartment, his desire for the hottie now completely gone. "But if that's not the case and everybody's all doing fine now, thanks to me, obviously, then I'm going to bid you to adieu, have a nice day and all that, blah, blah, blah." "Hold on a second," Mila said, struggling to keep her voice even and flat. The idiot could go ahead and go home. She'd had enough of his crap anyway. But she still had to ask him about that loud noise. She waited for the idiot to turn around, disregarded his exaggerated sigh of annoyance, and said, "I heard something before I opened my door too. It's the only reason I even came out here." She looked back and forth between the idiot and Mike, who appeared to have finally recovered. "Do either of you know what that was? Or what caused—" "My first guess was that someone's radiator blew up," Jeremy blurted, his smirk returning. "But I don't know. After meeting you and seeing all your makeup smeared like you've been crying or something, I don't know. Now I'm thinking maybe it was just the sound of your own ego deflating." The hottie exhaled through her teeth. Then her eyes narrowed again, and she was about to move forward once more, but stopped as Nate stepped in between them. "Okay, hey guys, can I say something?" Mark timidly chimed in. His voice was still strained from the attacks on his throat, but he wanted to avoid another confrontation between his neighbors, if at all possible. They didn't object, but kept glaring at each other, neither willing to tear their gaze away to look at him. I appreciate you guys' efforts to help me. I really do," Mark said. He knew he should be angry, but he could only manage a strangled tone of apologetic gratitude. He coughed to his other neighbor, whose name he still couldn't remember. "You did a great job, Mr. His neighbor didn't take the hint to provide his name, and just kept glaring at Marla. Helping to saving my life, in your own way." In her periphery, Mila saw Mike silently flounder to finish his sentence, then abruptly turned to her. "And Mila, thank you, too. You were really—" Mila was a little disappointed with herself when she actually felt victorious as the idiot finally looked away, but she was able to dismiss this by her anger over the idiot's interjection of, "The hell you talking about? This chick didn't do shit." "Did you just call me chick?" Jeremy braced himself as the hottie stood straight, her jaw set. But although once again her eyes were wrathful slits and her fists balled, she didn't step forward this time and just kept glaring. He gathered she had picked up on his clear superiority. Mila was actually debating the morality of hitting someone so dumb, and this encouraged him enough to say, "Hey, those pants look a little tight for it to me, but I suppose you could be packing some meat. You never know. I've been fooled before. It happens, especially in badly lit shitholes like this. But I had the sure bet on you being a chick, so I don't see what your problem is." Mila snapped. harshly spitting her name at him. "My name is Mila, you sexist douchebag pig. Not chick, not lady, Mila." The idiot's ugly smirk widened in preparation of whatever smart-ass comment he was going to make, but Mike suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, I thought your name was Marla." "Huh." She slowly turned her head in his direction and blinked. It's Mike sputtered, withering underneath Mila's deadpan stare. "It's a just beautiful name, Marla. Mila. Is that spelled with a..." Mark gulped for the 1,000th time tonight, terrified to meet Mila's glare, but even more terrified to look away. He had started asking his question without a clear understanding of how it would end, or why he was even asking it. But something in her eyes, a fury watching from the shadows just behind the lenses, pulsing with the rapid constricting and dilating of her pupils, compelled him to speak aimlessly, to flap his tongue in hopes of shooing away her hate for him. In other words, Mark wanted, at that moment, nothing more than for Mila to like him. As he uselessly stammered and stuttered, still trying to finish his question, he wondered if he should work on getting his brain to like himself instead. "Is that spelled how it sounds?" Mike finally lamely sputtered, and Mila did everything she could to refrain from cringing. It wasn't enough, but she hoped her attempt at switching her expression into one of subtle delight was convincing. It wasn't. Yeah, she pleasantly lied, nodding profusely, then stopped when she realized it was something she did when speaking to a toddler. Yeah, I think it's fair to say..." "Jesus Christ," Jeremy muttered, appalled at their little exchange, particularly Mila's poor acting skills, and Nate is just appalled at everything Nate in general. Jeremy stepped towards his apartment, but said to Mila, "Hey, I'm sorry for the chick thing, okay? My humblest and deepest apologies, Mila, your majesty." He bowed dramatically, and Mila scoffed. Then he started walking towards his front door. "And on that note, I bid you ladies a lovely night." "I heard that sound too, by the way," Mark eagerly disclosed, stopping his other neighbor in his tracks. "That's why I came over here," he told Mila, resisting the urge to lick his lips, which he had suddenly just discovered were extremely chapped. Mila was uncertain at first why Mike winced as he flashed her a small, fleeting smile, but then she noticed a small droplet of blood appear on his upper lip, and she guessed they were so dry they had cracked, typical for a drug addict, in her experience. But she was too curious about the sound to care about his narcotic use. Her intrigue revitalized once more, and hurriedly asked him, "So you heard it too? And you don't know what that was either?" "Already told you," Jeremy droned, gripping the doorknob to his apartment. "Someone's radiator probably blew. Bet you 10 to 1. "You don't think maybe it could have come from in there?" Mila asked him, gesturing at Carl's apartment. Since neither Mike nor the idiot seemed to know what had caused the sound, and there didn't appear to be any signs of its source in the hallway, she had deduced the old man's apartment was the most likely place to inspect. Maybe Carl's radiator did blow up. Not that she would ever admit the idiot might have guessed correctly. He stopped, but although she had expected an exasperated, irritated grunt or sigh at having been hampered, yet again, in his clear desire to go back home, to Mila's amazement, she actually thought she saw concern flash across his face. That's all it was, really, a flash, faint enough that Mila supposed she could have just imagined it. A trick of the hallway's dim lighting, nothing more. She was incredibly tired, after all, and the adrenaline generated by the mysterious sound had begun to fade several minutes ago. Still, however quick his concern had been before the idiot donned his already too familiar smirk, Mila had the impression that he might actually care about the old man, and the possibility that the sound may have come from Carl's apartment, and that Carl could be in danger, seemed to worry the idiot. He hid it well, but Mila had to stop herself from smirking back, as he all but confirmed her suspicion when he said, much too casually, "I mean, yeah, I guess I suppose it could have come from Kyle's place, but, I mean, he's probably fine, right? We would have heard something, yeah? He would have shouted us something, right?" "He could be dead," Mark chimed in, realizing too late that he had said it much too enthusiastically. It occurred to him how rusty his people skills had become. Then he contemplated if he had ever actually had any before. "We should go check on him, he added, hoping it sounded calm and sincere. He licked his lips absent-mindedly, embarrassed that he tasted blood, and felt the flop sweat break out into his brow.
knock on his door or something. Make sure he isn't, you know.
Dead? Mila offered, interested to see if the suggestion would goad the idiot into helping her investigate Carl's apartment, since his possible connection with the old man could somehow help her get in. She was grateful Mike had provided her an opportunity for psychological manipulation, and made a mental note to thank him later. How would that work, though, Mike? She slyly asked, focusing on him, but keeping the idiot in sight. If he's dead and we knock on his door, is he going to answer it and tell us he's dead? Or or do you think his corpse will just shout out from the pool of blood it's laying in and just let us know that way? All right, Mark's other neighbor muttered, walking the couple steps towards Carl's apartment. Having spent the majority of the past few minutes in a state of increasing confusion, Mark's bewilderment rose tenfold when he saw a vicious smile suddenly erupt on Mila's face, aimed at his other neighbor's back. There's no reason to talk about Carl like that, lady. He's just a defenseless old... Oh, sorry. Jeremy faced Mila, his sneer somewhat apologetic. Mila, I mean. He ignored her stupid little smile and turned back to Carl's door, his fist raised and poised to knock. He hated that the annoying little twit probably detected the genuine concern he felt for Carl, but oh well. Until she brought it up, it hadn't even occurred to him the noise could have come from Carl's place, and he cursed himself inwardly for having been too selfish to think of it. If a radiator or something blew up in the building, boo-hoo, what a tragedy. He had wanted to suggest one of the dumbass dope fiends could have finally blown themselves up, but didn't want to offend Nate, as the guy clearly didn't need another put-down. But if Carl was in trouble... Hey, the guy's probably just sleeping, you know? Mark's other neighbor muttered, but Mark thought it almost sounded like he had said it to himself. The old guy can sleep through anything, I'm telling you. I feel bad even disturbing him like this, all right? Hey, Mike, did you know? Mila cunningly crooned to Mike, still keeping the idiot in her periphery, that if a piece of metal, maybe let's say a chunk flying off an exploding appliance, like a radiator, just as an example, pierced you in the gut, it could take hours for you to bleed to death.
No?
As Mila informed him that this outcome could be worsened if the victim was elderly, Mark grimaced, disturbed and puzzled as to why she was telling him this. He thought this was a rather insensitive moment to divulge such macabre information. His other neighbor clearly felt the same, and it was no surprise that he immediately began hastily pounding on Carl's door. As Mila smirked at his neighbor's back again, Mark started to wonder if she was as mentally stable as he had first believed. It's unclear at which point he initially viewed her as mentally stable, but he assumed if he was now questioning that belief, then he must have believed it beforehand. Amazingly, he began to wonder if, like him, perhaps her mental instability included a lack of people skills too. And, of course, Mark liked this about her. He smiled again, and winced as his chapped lips cracked once more. Hey, Carl, you in there, buddy? Jeremy shouted, banging on Carl's door. Jeremy's intense knocking was partially caused by the very real worry he had for his friend, but he was mostly pissed that the little twit's obvious manipulation had worked so damn well. Plus, he had only been slightly lying about the old man's poor hearing. Twice already, at least, Mila had laid traps and snags that led him exactly where she wanted him to go. He would have to watch out for her. This chick's game was on point.
My name's actually Mark, by the way, not Mike,
Mark said to Mila, but the words were covered by the loud knocking. Mila heard Mike say something, but couldn't hear it over the idiot's hammering fist. Huh? She craned her ear towards Mike to hear better.
Mark
said flatly. Mila shrugged, mistaking the name for a verb. Mark what?
Mark Hamill,
Mark told her, his upper lip still bleeding.
Just kidding,
he added with an awkward chuckle, then licked his lips again. Okay.
It's actually...
Jeremy pounded on the door again. Carl, wake up, kiddo. I'll buy you a newspaper or something. Let's go to the park. How about that? Should we just call the superintendent? Mila asked him, annoyed and confused by Mike's joke, if that's what it had been, and by the idiot's incessant banging. Maybe they can... Jeremy grumbled, shaking his head as he finally lowered his fist from Carl's door. He's got a key round here. I just... What? You could have unlocked it I promised I wouldn't tell no one, Jeremy retorted, turning his head so fast towards her that he heard something in his neck crack, and definitely felt it. He bravely played the pain off and said, I just don't know if you guys should see where he keeps it, is all. Mila had heard the crack too, and saw the idiot wince, and she mockingly said, let me guess, it's tucked away in your half of a BFF locket. Oh my, ha ha, it's on the fucking door sill, all right? Jeremy growled as he rubbed his neck and looked away from Mila, then reached up to grab said key from its hiding place, grumbling and muttering all the while. He could feel that little twit's smirk burning into his back, and if Nate hadn't still been lingering around, seriously, what the fuck was this stone loser still doing here? Maybe Jeremy would have really given her a piece of his mind. He had never before hit a woman, found the very thought despicable and ugly, and prided himself on that fact. But this chick was really trying his patience. As his other neighbor shoved the key into the doorknob and unlocked it, Mark nervously hissed to Mila, Wait, isn't this breaking and entering? Nate, you moron, Jeremy scoffed as he shoved Carl's door open. We ain't breaking nothing. We're just entering. He turned to the open apartment, greeted by blackness. Carl? You home? I'm Mark. You... Mark angrily began, trailing off meekly. His other neighbor glanced over his shoulder at him and snidely said, Oh, I'm so sorry. My apologies, Mark. Like you even know my name. Mila could see the hurt and guilt on Mark's face, and she wanted to say something nasty and witty to the idiot as he reached into the dim apartment, his hand fumbling against the wall in search of the light switch, but just bit her tongue instead. It wasn't like she knew the idiot's name either. Jeremy found the switch and flicked the light on, almost as if sensing the other's inner conflict over the ignorance of his name, or if it was intentionally chosen at the right moment. Weird, right? He called out, Hey, Carl, it's Jeremy. I'm coming in, okay? And removed the last instance of an incorrect name, finally. Like his, Carl's apartment was a single room, so Jeremy could instantly see Carl wasn't in it, but he kept in mind that Carl could be in the bathroom and stepped inside a few paces. I got some people with me. Hope that's cool. There was a noise, and we thought maybe... Mila stomped into the room, stood directly next to Jeremy, and clearly projected, Mr. Carl, we're sorry to intrude like this, but there was a very loud sound that sounded like maybe it could have been an explosion, so we... Jeremy shushed, peevishly waving at her to quiet down. You want the old man to have a heart attack or something? He whispered admonishingly. He's probably on the crapper. You're gonna give him a honey and talking about explosions like that.
Hello?
Mark hesitantly exclaimed, his foot hovering over the threshold.
Mr. Carl, I am also coming inside, if that's... May we enter?
I don't think he's here, Mila scoffed to Jeremy, gesturing at the bathroom, which was unlit with the door wide open.
Do I have your permission to step inside?
Mark asked the absent tenant, his foot still hanging in the air. Oh, the bulb in the blue, and he's got the door open to let the light in, Jeremy haughtily whispered to Mila. And now he's sitting there, shitting in the dark and wondering who the hell's in his pad and why the fuck they're all whispering.
I am stepping inside,
Mark stated, leerily setting his foot down.
Now.
Carl, Mila blared, staring blankly at Jeremy. Are you or are you not in the bathroom? She continued to stare at Jeremy, her eyebrows raised while she awaited Carl's response. There was only silence, and Jeremy glared at her.
So, is he not home?
Mark whispered, motionless, with one foot still in the hallway. Nope, Mila replied, beaming at Jeremy as he turned away and sighed. It surprised her how entertaining it was to defeat him, and how easily she could do it. Seeing him look away again gave her a sense of victory, but as he scanned the empty apartment and the flash of concern once more slipped under the mask of insolence he perpetually wore, she wondered if it would be best to back off a bit. Come to think of it, she wasn't even sure what victory there had been to claim. Did it matter in the slightest that Jeremy had been wrong and Carl wasn't home? Why did she make such a big deal of it?
So, can I come in, or?
Mark asked, still frozen in place from terror. Nobody understood why he was so afraid, including himself. Yes, Mila irritably snapped, as Jeremy snorted, No! Mark looked at them both for a moment, with only his blinking eyelids to indicate he was still mobile, then cautiously slid his other foot inside, his expression uncertain if this action was acceptable, desperately searching for confirmation from either one of them. Look, I hate to say you have a point, Mila said to Jeremy, trying to keep her tone amicable. But that thing you said about him having a heart attack. Yeah? Jeremy asked, suspiciously.
Do you guys think his radiator blew up?
Mark asked as he stepped next to Mila, pointing at the radiator against the wall, which had very obviously not exploded. Well, Mila carefully continued, ignoring Mark. What if you were right about the light being out, him going with the door open to see, and then that noise happened, and he... She saw that he understood her implication, and she shrugged and raised her palms, hoping it looked sincere and commiserating. The feelings were genuine, but one she rarely bothered displaying.
Wait, do you think Carl exploded?
Mila and Jeremy both glared at Mark and testily shouted no. While Mark was a little vexed, they yelled at him so hostilely, and his demeanor blatantly showed this. He was partially proud to have caused their first moment of agreement. So what are you saying? Jeremy asked Mila, growing tired of this routine she was doing, whatever it was. If you think he's in there, dead on the shitter, then goddammit, just say it, all right? I figured that part was pretty heavily implied, idiot. Jeremy. But what I was getting at is, well, I'm a woman, so I don't think we ever actually settled that issue, he mumbled. So you should be the one to go check and see. God! She actually stamped her foot. She was so mad. Oh, 'cause I'm a man, I gotta be the one to go check? Why doesn't Exorcist Jones over here go? Jeremy suggested, jabbing a thumb at Mark. If you're gonna go the woman route.
But I'm a man,
Mark objected, his grasp of the issue dubious at best. And do you want him to throw up on the body? Mila glanced at Mark and hastily added, no offense.
No, it's okay, I probably would.
Mark sheepishly agreed. Jeremy swore under his breath, then growled, fine. He slowly exhaled through his nostrils, then tentatively stepped towards the bathroom. At the last step, he leaned forward and peeked around the doorframe.
Is he in there?
Mark whispered, swiftly offering profuse apologies after causing Jeremy to jump and scream. No! Jeremy snapped as he smacked the bathroom's light switch and turned the light on. Empty! Though neither could exactly explain why, both Mila and Mark felt compelled to look inside the bathroom. It was, indeed, empty, the dingy bulb revealing an unoccupied toilet and vacant shower stall. What, do you think I'd lie? Jeremy scoffed, then studied the apartment for a clue as to Carl's whereabouts. Does he ever go for a walk? Mila proposed, hoping to steer the tone away from Jeremy's sarcasm. Nah, not anymore, Jeremy said tiredly, rubbing his eyes. He don't really like going past the first floor these days. Not that I blame him, he glanced at Mark. No offense. Mark wrinkled his brow.
I live on this floor.
Then what about the grocery store or something? Mila said, feeling exhausted herself. The urge to yawn came on suddenly, and it was difficult to keep it down. Nah, Jeremy said distractedly. Carl's absence was really beginning to worry him. Where could the old man be? Did it have anything to do with that noise? Nah, I doubt it, he said, realizing he needed to hide his concern in front of Mila. He couldn't give her another opening. He's probably just asking the super what that sound was. Carl's always snooping around about stuff like that. So we should probably just get out of here before he gets back,
His shoes are still here,
Mark observed, nodding at the loafers near the door, which they had left wide open, placed next to an umbrella leaning against the wall. He assumed both items would be used for the customary old man on a walk outfit, so he doubted Carl had gone out, but neither Jeremy nor Mila had heard him. As Jeremy started to head towards the entrance, Mila grabbed his arm. Hold on. Don't you think we should wait here until he gets back, so we all know he's okay? Yeah, Jeremy drawled, yanking his arm free of Mila's grasp. But I vote we do that outside his apartment. Well, why didn't you just say so then? Mila jeered at Jeremy, throwing his tone back at him. But he just wordlessly turned on his heel and moved towards the door, and she begrudgingly followed. He then suddenly stopped in his tracks, and she nearly bumped into him. Then Mark ensured this happened by walking into her and knocking her directly into Jeremy's back. The three fell to the floor atop one another, yelping with anger and pain. But before Mila could scold the other two, she noticed they had turned pale and rigid and were staring at the doorway. She followed their fixated gaze and learned why Jeremy had halted so unexpectedly. Two men stood shoulder to shoulder before Carl's open door, wearing black and white suits, inelegant in design but still of a respectable style. Their shoes were simple black wingtips, polished, but not recently, and perhaps only once. They were both smiling, but something lurked underneath, hiding behind the twinkle in their overly friendly stares.